a citizen, a good citizen right now, so we can
Right.
roll that. We roll that in, and I don't think it'll cost any more for our support. You know, from our standpoint of our contract. The only thing there might be, and I'm concerned that I never heard back from them, the cost of their fiber from the state was free, so their internet was free for that really high level of fiber service, and if we have to pick that cost up, that's a fairly substantial cost, which I did see that you had put it in the budget, but I don't know why the state wouldn't. It's still a library, and I don't know why the state is not allowing that.
Pull it.
Yeah,
I can check on that and find out.
That's a good question. Yeah.
So I know you have been doing a lot of service down there, so thank you for that. But I think people may want to understand, that's why I ask you this question, to say, oh no, Kevin's gonna have to come in and change all their computers and stuff like that and all this other stuff that may add to the cost. But I wanted people to understand that you have been kind of working.
we've been doing the service, and nothing will change. We don't have to change anything down there. They're already using our virtual machines. They're already part of our network. So there really are no changes except for the ongoing service that we provide.
Okay, I will find out that information regarding the fiber from the state.
Any other technology questions? Seeing none, thank you, Kevin. Public safety.
There we go. Mouse door. Thank you.
Joe?
Bruce, in your write-up, you say you're going to try and get 4 new people into your department phased in over 2 years.
Correct.
In your current budget, are you budgeting for all 4 of those people now?
No, there are two positions proposed currently.
Because you got a 25% increase in salary.
Yeah. So the salaries that we put in for, and that was something I needed to cover quickly here because something changed. We had some movement. Were based on the original union proposal, and since then we have actually, because this has been quite a while now, but since then there's been some movement on that, some adjustment. We actually can take $20,000 out based on the current proposal and where we're at. So we got a $20,000 savings right off the top in our bottom line. But those other 2 positions are in there as noted as in my sheet. Hopefully you have the same one as new staff 1 and 2 based on the current proposed rates.
So you're looking at the other 2 next year.
Correct.
And you just sent out the wage and salary benefit from the towns that I just looked at. Raymond's going to be the most well-paid town, pretty much.
You could look at it that way initially for face value. That is for sure. But when you look at it deep down, you'll find that most of those communities are already under negotiations. Unfortunately, they won't disclose where they're at for wages or proposals, but I have to assume that they're going to be probably above ours by the time they're done, probably even above our proposal. I have rumors, and I can go with that, but I just don't have the factual figures as of today.
Okay.
Don?
The other thing that's important is that we do have a federal SAFER grant that if we're successful, will mitigate the cost of the new positions. We'll provide for them for a 3-year period. And we're not obligated to continue them, although I don't know what we'd do if we didn't. But if we get that federal grant, and it's highly competitive. I found out, Bruce, in talking to some of my colleagues, a lot of the surrounding towns are doing the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Difficulty in getting volunteers and so forth. They're paid volunteers, call members. So, but I think, Kathy Goslin is probably involved in this deeply, and she's had a good track record. I know you've been involved in it. So I'm optimistic and hopeful that we'll get those positions funded, or at least, and we've applied for more than 2. And so hopefully you get a partial award. And we won't know that though till the fall, I think.
That would be correct. It would be the fall when we finally get the word on that. And just kind of anecdotal, but true, is that a couple of years back, we tried to kind of merge with some other towns to do the same proposal as a regional proposal and gain 8 personnel, and the other towns weren't interested in playing. They wanted to do it on their own. So kind of gives you an idea of where we're at. Kind of standing out there all by ourselves in a way other than mutual aid.
But that's changing though. I mean, there's some good discussions that are being led by the county. I'm optimistic because everybody's in the same boat. We're working on an initiative to be able to share personnel very easily across across communities, looking to the degree possible. And it looks like, I mean, we don't know what those other towns are going to end up at, but they're going to go up. But we're talking about, without any kind of antitrust issue, but looking at, stabilizing and having the wages be comparable. I know the chiefs are talking about that, correct?
Correct, and that pertains particularly to the per diem staff and creating a per diem pool across our 6-town mutual aid group that we've been working close together with, standardized pay rates so that we're at least not in competition with each other on the part-time folks. And it'll be a pool, so if there's a job open, a position open, we can go to the list, call people, or put it out to them. If they're interested, they'll get the same rate whether they're working in North Yarmouth or in Raymond.
And then it'll be easy for them to travel between the communities. We'll do things to facilitate, the portability of that, and there won't be any benefit to them probably to jump. It'll be the same, and they can pick one that's close proximity that works for them. Maybe what they like. I mean, some departments are different than others, so there wouldn't be this idea of we're going to jump to somebody because they're, ratcheting pay up.
Correct.
But I'm hoping the big thing is the SAFER grant. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yep, if we're successful, that would be a great thing. It really would be. It's just not getting easier with the call companies. Everybody, again, preaching to the choir, you've all heard me, is in the same boat. We're struggling to do way more with way less. And I'll share when it comes to talking about probably next week or whenever we meet about the other salary stuff, all the open shifts and things like that we're unable to fill. And that you could go pick any town and sit down with them and talk to them and they'll have the same story to tell you.
So Bruce, can we take that 20,000?
That $20,000 is was the original proposal, and it's been dropped by that much. So yeah.
For negotiations so far.
Through negotiations so far, yes.
All right, so let's make sure we make a note of that.
Oh yeah.
I've written it down as well. So yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna do that.
So,
I mean, Bruce, what's your feeling on where that supply on the supply side as far as the people you're looking to bring in? I mean, right now that market is so darn tight that everybody's looking for the same body, and
Correct.
I mean, is it realistic that you're going to be able to get those two, or are you going to
They
where?
Yeah, well, it's sorry, I didn't mean to jump in on it, but yes, I'm pretty confident at this level. We're looking at firefighter EMTs. No, not looking at paramedics at this level. That's one that when we put out, we've usually had pretty good reception and gotten a lot of applicants on that. There is Westbrook's having a problem filling theirs. I know Portland's hiring now. We see them everywhere. So we are in high competition, and that's where we need to be very competitive to be able to get and attract those folks and then be able to keep them. And I think that's important that everybody gets to hear that. It's easier to keep people than it is to rehire and retrain and re-outfit. And it's also way cheaper to do that in the long run. You might pay a little bit more up front, but a set of gear is $2,700. If you buy it sized for me, and the next person you hire, because I leave, is 5'2", it doesn't fit them right, you can't use it. It becomes an additional expense. So we consider all of those issues and try to be in that competitive range, and I think that that's where we're headed. So,
Another thing, are you seeing some stabilization finally on the drug price increases? You only gone up about $1,000 on that, and that's mean, that's a big volatile area there.
It is, and Kathy can comment on this one. There's one particular med that has gone through the roof, and a couple others that are becoming very hard to get, and et cetera. But Kathy, why don't you jump in and go through those?
What we're finding, Rolf, is we're finding shortages. And I know Joe can probably speak to that too. I mean, we can't even get our saline flushes right now because those syringes have been used for vaccines. They just added IV Tylenol this year to one of the drugs that we have to carry. And if I want to buy it through Boundtree, Tylenol IV, they're putting it $300 a shot. Okay, I can give them Tylenol pills for about 30 cents, but they wanted to give us by IV. So that's just an example. We're finding that there's shortages of drugs. There's a lot of competition out there, you know, which vendor we can get them from. But I think we're gonna be somewhat okay. Maine Med's been really good. We go through their pharmacy, purchase a lot of our drugs, and they're keeping the price down. So that's been helpful. So we're gonna keep our fingers crossed.
And then I guess, you know, I mean, the other, I'm assuming though that, that gets passed through on that billing side too, correct? That, you know,
No.
so.
Well,
No, the meds do not. They no longer, we have to follow what Medicare and Medicaid pay. And they know they do a BLS level. So if you're basic life support, you get a charge for that. Then there's 2 ALS levels, ALS 1 and ALS 2. ALS 2 is when you use 3 or more medications. So you get a little bit of a bump, but we no longer, you know, years ago, they said if you had an IV, it was so much money. If you had this drug, it was so much money. You know, supplies were so much. Now it's just basically a lump sum based on that. Our prices are going up a little bit. I know, Rolf, you had mentioned the billing. Net payments on our billing so far year to date. Sorry, I gotta put glasses on. Net is 142,000. Last year we had 176,000. So we upped the budget, as Cherie said in the beginning, to 175. And we should be good with that. Be able to make that no problem. Maybe even 180, but we don't want to push it.
I go back because one thing I kind of forgot to mention, Joe, when you talked about salaries, is that we also assumed Mary Quirk into our budget last year as administration, and she's working in the front office, and that's also reflected in this budget, and that's a new addition that wasn't there last year. So I just wanted to make sure everybody's aware of that.
But it has been there in prior years.
Mary hasn't been there. Well, yeah, yes. We had one that we dropped it. We assumed it as a paramedic position at that point.
Right, we had somebody in Pete Holmquist who was here with us for a number of years, but he took a public safety position in another town. So then we had it unfilled for a year or two, maybe.
Yeah, we just used it as staff in the field at that point. So,
and I guess what happened, I don't want to speak for you, but what happened during that time is that you and Kathy both were pretty overwhelmed by a lot of the administrative paperwork that you had to deal with, in addition to running calls and managing the department, if that's right.
Correct.
And Mary has worked out well?
Mary's working out very well. Yeah.
Any other questions for the public safety? For the public safety. Then we'll move on to animal control. Don, did you have something? Don, did you have a question?
No, I was scratching my head.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. I don't think we invited the animal control officer, did we, Charisse? I'm not sure. And maybe she should have the budget schedule, though, correct?
Yes. She made it to our, was it our first meeting?
Well, she was at the last meeting.
Jessica came to the last one, but I don't see her here tonight. Is she here soon now?
No.
But I'll do the best I can if you have questions.
Did anyone see where Jessica made the radio the other day about a call with chickens? It was kind of interesting.
She was also on television, and apparently
Yeah.
she's going to be on the Kelly Clarkson show, which I'm not familiar with, but I guess that's a big show.
Well, she talked about how she put the chickens in the back of her truck, in her vehicle, and then they climbed up front and sat on her shoulder while she drove. And she went through Dunkin' Donuts and got them donut crumbs and stuff. And
It was cute.
it was comical.
It was. People need a laugh, you know, so.
We have replaced, Nathan's been involved in it. The other town managers, myself, we did replace her car, which was a surplus state police K9 unit. We flipped the equipment from the 14 Ford Explorer into a 19 that we got through an auto broker. It came out of a police department. And so she has a new, better car, and there is some expense to outfitting that new car, and that's in Public Works. Nathan takes care of that, but we bill it back to the other towns. It's a three-way split on everything. So we should be good to go with that car, hopefully for another, period of years. It's been all dog or animal equipped. They take out the interior and put the aluminum and metal and cages and all the things. So basically from the front seats back, it's no longer a passenger car. But we took the passenger car interior out of the one that we bought and put that in the old one. So that's going to go to auction next week, which should hopefully get us $6,000 or $7,000 towards our capital expense for the new one, the new used one.
So I'm assuming that we're paying 500 and her total gas budget is 1,500. Is that correct?
Sharice, you want to take that one?
Yeah, that's Raven's share.
No,
Yeah.
no, okay.
Yeah.
Just with people filling up their tanks right now, like for one fill up, it's hitting $90, $100. So
Yeah, fortunately, Nathan's got, we're locked in, excuse me, with our gas and diesel rates until June 30th, but we don't know what those are gonna be,
okay, good.
and starting in July.
Okay.
Any last questions for animal control? Public Works. No questions for Public Works? How's that sand and salt holding out?
Good. We're good.
Good, we're good.
We didn't run out.
Nathan, no talk so much.
No news is good news. Quietly slide under the radar.
Well, thank you, Nathan. Solid waste while we have you. Nothing for solid waste? Town buildings.
Oh, Joe.
Sorry, Joe.
On solid waste, where are we with recycling?
Well, we have a recycling committee that's been meeting monthly. Rolf's a member, and I expect they'll be writing a report. Are you talking in terms of expenditures?
Yes.
Okay,
Whether or not we're gonna stay with it.
well, that's what I'm getting to. So basically, we're in the process of, coming to a final report. I don't want to, speculate too much, but my sense is that if the mission originally was to look at, not doing recycling, I don't believe it's going that direction. I would let Rolf, as a member, maybe speak on that if he's willing.
And there's still research that's going on, but I mean, Kathy is on, Kathy Goff
Yeah, that's
is on
true too, right.
too, as well as Karen Lockwood. So there's,
Right.
but there's a number of different things that are being looked at. But we're under contract with Casella that goes out for another couple of years. So I mean, if we're doing any changes, it's not going to be an overnight change. It'll have, anything that's changed, it would be phased in or whatever, as far as I would believe, because we're still under contract there. But, they've been in some of the meetings and given presentations and things too. So yes, and all those are available on the web.
And I would say that the other thing thank you, Rolf, and I didn't realize I should have. We had 2 more members of the committee. There's a lot of all in the family here in our town committees. But anyway, they are looking at ways to mitigate costs by getting the wet food waste out. So that's area of discussion. They're looking at education, to improve the quality of the recyclables. But no final decisions have been made. But I remember the original charge, and I think that's what you're speaking about, right? Yeah. So, but I guess we need to wait till the end, right? Recycling committee members. I don't know if anybody else wants to jump in on it. Kathy, Karen.
I think when you say you want a recycling committee, the people you're gonna get to volunteer for a committee like that are people that want to recycle more. And I think that's one thing the committee is finding. But we are looking at, can you do more of the composting, more of the other things? We've had some really good presentations by the companies, and it's been interesting to find out where the money goes in that. And you're going to see, I think the committee is going to want to encourage recycling, but also, as Dawn said, reduce the weight of the trash by taking the food waste out, because that's about 40% of our trash. And if we can reduce that, then we'll save some money.
Thank you, Kathy. And Karen's been attending some statewide meetings, and I think you plan to do that again this year, correct? And so you get a sense of what other towns are doing and whatnot.
Yes, I plan to attend a seminar that's coming up, I believe, in early May. And they have some good topics to attend.
Teresa?
So I hate bringing this up now because we're talking budgets, but I'm going to put this out there. So what are the hopes maybe of possibly getting something to do with the dump back in Casco? Kathy's like, no. No.
You're saying to participate in the transfer station with them?
As far as having a place to take our
Oh, you're talking bulky waste.
yes.
Bulky waste. There are many options for bulky waste, Teresa, besides Casco. I recommend the former MWAC Maine waste action, I guess now, but have you looked at MWAC? Are you talking because of the price of being a non-member to go to Casco?
I haven't had to go to Casco, which is good, but I know we had it before, and I know people want somewhere close is what it is, instead of having to go far. Don't raise your hand, Nathan. Don't do it.
Nathan, go ahead,
You've been
Nathan.
quiet this whole time. Don't do it now.
Well, we've got the Casco transfer station, and you've
Yep.
got Consella Waste on over in Naples, which they're pretty easy to deal with. And
Okay.
Don said MWAC, they're a little bit.
It's actually Maine Waste to Energy. I don't know why they changed their name. MWAC was so easy to remember, but yeah.
To
Go
the
ahead.
place in Auburn.
So, all right, because I think we weren't allowed to go to Casco currently. I thought that they were
You
closed.
can go to Casco, you pay a non-resident rate.
It's
Okay.
not free.
Yeah, but you only can do bulky waste. We've never been able to go to their MSW side or the recycling side. We were only allowed into the bulky waste side. Never been
Right.
able to take our household trash over there.
And in the past, when I've come to you with, and I don't do it anymore, but way back when I came to you with alternatives, it's kind of like the third rail of Raymond government. I think people like the system that we have. It's a very convenient and full service system, a premium service to be sure. And if you look at it environmentally, you got your pickup roadside with 1 truck or 2 trucks with recycling, and you're avoiding hundreds of cars to go somewhere else to the transfer stations. That's one. If you look at the environmental savings, is that, and then the time and effort to do it. I think the selectmen over a long period of time have said they like the system of the roadside collection of MSW and recycling, and we've not adopted a paper bag system. I brought that up a number of years ago. So there are some things that you could do if you want to mitigate costs, but we have a premium service when it comes to the MSW collections, and
Right.
I think that's something we have wanted to do.
I'm just thinking the big stuff.
That's bulky waste, and there's a lot of places you can take it.
I wrote them down. Thank
All
you.
right.
Go ahead, Sue.
We have a sheet in the town office that we give out on a very regular basis that has a list of all the places, what they take, what their contact information is. So the public's welcome to come in and get it as our select board members.
And by way of history, why we got rid of it was we were appropriating like $150,000 and it was increasing. And we looked at the number of people who were using it. It was a very small group that was populated by a lot of contractors, in fact. And so then we went to a coupon system, gave people, you know,
Yep.
a couple £1,000s or something a year. And the selectmen in those days eventually decided that it would be more appropriate, and a lot of towns do it this way, as a user pay. So we withdrew from the bulky waste, and that's where it's been. It's a
Who
user
are those selectmen that did that?
pay. I couldn't tell you now. It's been a long time ago. I don't remember.
Just joking. Just
Yeah.
joking.
It's a long time ago.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I'm just looking for my next project, you know?
But at the time, it was a budget savings, and it was seen as something that is so, you know, specific to an individual that it would be, you could pay and not use it, or a lot of people were using it a lot.
Mm.
So,
Yep.
or some people using it a lot, I should say.
Any other questions on solid waste?
Nope.
Okay, let's move on to town buildings. Don't do it, Teresa.
I was gonna ask, but I thought we already passed it. I'm gonna shut up. Nobody else asked. I'm gonna let it go. Go.
Nothing for town buildings? Cemeteries?
That's Sue. Are you dying to speak about anything?
I think the only thing I would say is I really truly appreciate the support the select board and the budget and finance committee have given to the $3,500 a year that I put into restoring the old parts of the cemetery. If any of you have had a chance to look at it, it's really quite nice looking. So, and it's preserving the historic value of the stones, so you can still read them and whatnot. So that I do appreciate.
Thank you, Sue, for the work you're doing on the cemeteries.
Thank you.
Let's start with recreation, then we'll move on to Tassel Top.
Be happy to answer any questions.
You're taking the Nathan approach here, Joe. You don't want to make some sort of a statement about where we've been over your inaugural I guess this is your second year, but
Yeah,
a lot's
it's been
happened.
2 years. No, it's been great. I kind of did some. I like to do a calendar year of revenues to kind of, because that's when things will get split. Like a lot of my programs or events get split in the fiscal year. And we reached in total with Tassel Top and programs and events $144,000 in revenues. So that's a really good indicator of kind of the activity that's going on in Raymond. So thank you guys for supporting that. And now that we have hopefully a normalized year coming up, that it's going to continue to grow and continue to be active for the community.
Teresa?
So Joe,
Check, hey, check. Good evening and welcome to the select board meeting. We needed to come back to a meeting because some of the wording in Article 24 was changed and we have to vote on that change. So new business, call to order. We're all here except Lonnie. New business, consideration of town attorney's rewording of Article 24 for RVL. Sue? Do you need to say anything on that?
No.
Okay. All right. So first, I need a motion to either reconsider or rescind.
We'll move to rescind the action of approving Article 24.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? All right. So now,
Move to accept Article 24, referendum question 5, to see if the town will accept as a conditional gift from the Raymond Village Library the assets of RVL, including land, buildings, books, and all personal property and all monetary assets as of June 30, 2022, minus $15,000 for startup costs. Total net estimate as of April 4, 2022 is approximately $195,000, as outlined in the memorandum of understanding between the RVL and the town of Raymond, signed 10/12/21. Available for view at the Raymond Town Office upon request. Such funds to be set aside as a non-lapsing town account separate from the general funds is to be used for library purposes only. 2, to establish a library as a town department. 3, to appropriate $60,000 from the non-lapsing town fund account to be used for the fiscal year 2022-2023 for the new library department. And 4, to also raise and appropriate $135,876 for the new library department.
Second. And shouldn't that be a period at the end instead of question mark?
No, it's a question to see if the town will.
Okay.
Oh, wait, you're right. You are right, it should be.
Yeah.
So Rolf read that pretty slow. I would have read it faster, but anyways. Any discussion? All in favor? All right. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second. Third. Fourth.
All in favor? Thanks, guys.
Bye. Nice job.
Thanks.
Good job.
Good evening. This is the organizational meeting for the Budget Finance Committee. I'm going to call this meeting to order. First off, we'll start with nominations for chairman. Do I have any nominations?
I nominate you, Bob.
Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? I need a motion to close nominations for chairman.
So
I move nomination cease.
All those in favor of Bob Goslin, raise your hand. I can't see Bob Jones, but thank you. Next order of business is to approve the minutes of the April 27th, 2021 meeting. Again,
Bob, did you want to elect a vice chair?
oh yes, sorry. Any nominations for vice chair? Any nomination for vice chair? Vice chair will sit in the place of the chair if he is not available.
If you're not available and we don't have any other members, Bob, we won't have a meeting.
We're having possibly two approved next week at the select board meeting. Bob Jones, you see on the screen, is one of them.
Diana Pickavett May.
Pickavett as well.
Mhm.
So, any nominations for vice chair? I'd like to nominate Dennis Morse.
This is all new to me, Bob.
The reason why I'm here.
Yeah.
Will you accept the nomination?
Sure.
Any other nominations? Motion to close nominations.
I move nominations cease.
Thank you. All those in favor of Dennis? Any opposed? Thank you, Dennis.
Okay.
Next, I'll need from our members from last year, a motion to approve the minutes of the April 27th meeting. That was our last budget meeting prior to the town meeting.
I move acceptance of the minutes from the last meeting.
Thank you. And I will second that. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Just so you understand how the process works, tonight we'll have a hearing of sorts and the presentation of the budget. After this meeting, after our other findings meeting, any questions you have need to be funneled through the chair, so that there won't be 5 different people asking the same question. We try to consolidate the questioning, and I'll route that to where it needs to be, and then I'll collectively to the team send out a message on the findings. So again, don't self-communicate with members of either the town hall or select board. Come to me first, and I will funnel it to where it needs to go. Are there any questions?
I have one, and that is when we just voted to accept the minutes of the last meeting, they're not in this budget committee report, this budget report, right?
No, they were sent as an attachment.
Okay, I'll have to go back and I'm working with 2 different emails now, and some of it's going to junk, so I'll check it out. Thank you.
Thank you. Sue? Abigail asked about a town email address.
Yes, I have sent a note to Kevin Woodbury, our tech, and he is in the process of trying to do that for all committee members. Okay. So as soon as we have one, I'll get it sent out to you. Because it is preferable to use town email for freedom of access requests. We don't want to go after your personal email if we don't have to. We also don't get a lot of requests, but you just never know.
Any other notes? Any other comments? Tonight we will be getting back together at 6:30, where we will have the findings meeting. And we'll have Don open it up with a brief overview. And then
I think we're gonna open with Sharice, I think, talking a little bit about the restructuring of the budget, and then Don, but I can introduce that if you'd like.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any other comment from the Budget Finance Committee?
Can I just ask like some basic, I've never done this before questions?
Okay.
So we're gonna have this next meeting. At that meeting, we're gonna like review what was in the budget book.
That's correct.
And then do we ask questions that we have during that meeting, or like what is the format of what happens in that? And then do we just basically go through like multiple meetings of doing that until we've gone through the whole binder?
That's correct. It should take 2 meetings to go through all our department heads and provider agencies. And then we'll have a workshop with the select board to kind of talk about these items, hot spots, areas of concern, so that, when it comes time to make a vote, we'll have everything we have in our pocket.
And on a really high level, now you'll have the department heads right there where you can ask some questions about what you've seen in the book. And that's the next 2 meetings. And like Bob said, there's a workshop. After that, the select board will put together the town warrant for that will be voted upon. And once they've made their recommendations, you'll get together again, go over the warrant and make your recommendations, whether you think things should be, as the select board say, or less.
Thank you.
So feel free to ask any questions to presenters this evening. And so that we don't wait to have to communicate by email, but feel free to
How
ask your questions.
detailed can those questions be? Like, I just don't want to be like the odd kid out asking like super detailed questions or like super dumb questions. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yep. You'll learn as we go along. So don't do. You can ask whatever questions you want tonight. So.
Well, that brings another question up then. Is there a time, do they set a timetable on these meetings? I know when select board used to meet with us about our cover letter or our whatever, PowerPoint presentation, there would be a timetable. In other words, is it our meetings? Is it a 6:30 to 7:30 meeting, Bob? Or is it, do we pick halfway through the budget and the chair of the select board decides the length of the meeting? How does that timetable work? Because like Abigail, you know me long enough. I have 50 questions for every one answer. So I'm trying really hard to come in here and be quiet, but the reality is there's a lot of questions that are involved with running the town in the budget process, especially if there's only 3 meetings. Is there a timetable? Do they?
No, there is no time limitation. I suppose if somebody started going on, it is the chair's prerogative to say, no, I think we've killed that horse. But that very rarely happens.
Okay.
But it is Bob's meeting. It's a budget finance committee meeting.
Oh, so Bob runs the meeting, not the select board.
That's correct. Sometimes, so I think for certain pieces, Bob, you've handed it over to the select board chair to run, like public safety, maybe. There have been times when you've done that, but not always.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions before we go?
So Abigail, I'll ask a question. Do you have a copy of the schedule, the meeting schedule? Do you have a copy of that? Okay, all right.
Yeah, and I've looked over the sections that are on the agenda for tonight.
Okay,
yeah.
Great.
Except I didn't have emergency public. So didn't have one tab that I thought maybe was supposed to be in there.
Yeah, that's there used to be a operating budget for emergency management, and I think that was primarily to back when the pandemic, and I may be speaking out of turn, and maybe Kathy can help us out here, but public safety used to have their own operating budget to track COVID or pandemic related expenses. So I know we're nearing, hopefully nearing the end of the pandemic, and I believe that's what that's all about.
Okay.
So there is no tab, but they can speak to that when their turn is up.
Just was checking that I didn't need to cram.
I don't see any other questions. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Dennis. Can I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Very good. I will see you in about 20 minutes.
Same log on?
There's a separate one to log into this.
Okay, I gotta go back on the internet now, go onto my
I'm
computer and figure out which one that.
Good evening. Welcome to the first department head review with the Budget Finance Committee and Select Board. I'd like to call this meeting to order. First order of business. I'm Bob Goslin, Chairman of the Budget Finance Committee, and I will chair this meeting. We will start first with review of administration.
Right. Thank you, Bob. So first thing I'd like to do is introduce our new finance director, Charisse Keach. She wanted to give a brief explanation of some of the changes she's made in the budget development methodology, information contained in the books, the addition of notes, and some other things that she's done. So the budget doesn't look exactly like it did last year. Charisse?
Thank you, Bob and Dawn. Yeah, the new budget books, for starters, they have tabs for each of the departments, which I think to be helpful when you're flipping through, maybe a 100-page document. So there are tabs, and I want to call it check stock, but it's not check stock, it's paper stock in between the various departments. So that helps to, ease flipping through pages. The other couple of changes are, as Dawn mentioned, there are spreadsheets that contain 2 fiscal years of budget to actual. And then you have the current fiscal year budget and year-to-date expenditures. Keep in mind that's only through December 31st. So I know Kathy had asked about that and we clarified that. So I want to point that out. Your year-to-date expenditures only go through December 31st. Some of the departments I try, and this is, a lot of it's for me personally, because I, don't always necessarily remember where an item was budgeted when you have so many various departments. So I do like to make little notations beside various expenditures. So I've done that. Not on all of them, but some of them. And the other thing is some of the things have been moved around from one department to another, and I can go into those, as an overview, excuse me, as an overview. As an example, Registry of Deeds was previously in the administration budget. I have now relocated that to the assessing budget. So that's one change. Another minor change is rescue billing. That was previously under administration, and that has been relocated to the fire department because that's what it has to do with, is public safety and fire and rescue department. And another change would be building maintenance. As an example, in Nathan's public works department, he had two building maintenance lines, one for District 1 and the other one just for public works. So what I did was relocate those all to town buildings. So it's town-wide buildings, building maintenance with the exception of public safety, because they have their own building maintenance line in their budget. So instead of having various building maintenance all over, the general operating budget, it's pretty centralized into town buildings. So that's just a couple of the changes. I do like to regroup at the end of the budget process just to obtain feedback, what worked well, what didn't work well, suggestions for improvement. I'm open to that. What you'd like to see different. I'm certainly, willing to consider, and accommodate everyone. And so we will eventually regroup and I will ask for feedback. Okay. That's all I have.
Right, thank you, Charisse.
You're welcome.
John, did you want to start with a statement?
Yes, I have a brief statement, a brief outline of, I guess you'd call it the really high points of the budget. We'll get into much more detail as we go department by department. But I'd like to first start by saying that I did issue a new budget memo today. In the crush of getting things out the other day, we thought we had made things really clear. But when I read it this morning, or maybe it was yesterday morning, I said, geez, it's not so clear, because at the addition of the issue of the library, really made sort of a double set of budgets for us. And so there is a new cover letter that hopefully is clearer as to what's happening. So on that point, I'll tell you what the budget looks like at the start here, with the library and without the library. So the gross budget without the library is up about $416,896, or 7.4%. If you net out the revenues from that gross budget without the library, you're looking at $251,623, or 7.4%. So an increase above what we normally would be presenting on initial budget. And then of course you have the gross budget with the library. So now you're adding a whole new department. You're taking on the whole library function. In that instance, you're looking at $551,772 increase, or 9.89%. And then if you net out the revenues, you're down to about $386,499, or 11.36%. And I can, let, I guess, Sharice explain why it's up, but it's a little bit of an odd phenomena. But anyhow, so we're looking at a significant budget increase over what we have normally seen. But what we also have is a significant change in the operations of the town. We've added a number of functions. I think the town is at a point where we're seeing, some new programming and some new directions. And, I credit our chair, Teresa Sadak, with a lot of the leadership that has caused that to come about. And I think it's positive stuff. And, the town is in very good fiscal shape. We continue to maintain our AAA bond rating. We are, able to go from, year to year without borrowing tax notes. We have put a substantial amount of fund balance into the, into the tax rate every year, and we intend probably to do that again this year. So the town's in good fiscal shape. I think it's operating well. We have great town employees, and I think we've gone a little bit beyond what we used to call the so-called Raymond way, which was just basic cable, what we are statutorily required to do government. We're doing a lot more than that today, and I think we're doing it very well. So that's my kind of pitch on where we're going. But for the department by department, the administration department, one of the things that's significant is we're going to go out and do an RFP for audit services. Now, the whole world, not only with the pandemic, but the municipal world is so different. There's only a limited number of firms that even do auditing anymore. So we're going to put the RFP out, see what we get. But some towns are not getting any responses. And what's clear is we're going to pay more. We're going to pay more for our audit. And so that's a big change. I mean, we used to have an environment where we had lots and lots of professional firms seeking town business. There are changes in the town clerk's elections budget, but I've learned from prior years, I'm going to let the town clerk detail those. So I'm not going to get into those. Under contract fees and services, that was included in the Roadrunner was included in contract fees and services in the FY 2022 budget. I think Sharice alluded to some moves in the budget. So that's been moved to the dues and publications budget for FY 2023. So anyhow, those are kind of the things that are happening in administration. And I probably should have had a percent by department number to give you on each one, but I actually don't have that on my outline, but you have that all in your budget book. I believe the administration budget was down just slightly on account of those moves. And so anyway, the code enforcement budget, of course, has now an assistant code officer. So that's a $71,000 increase in salaries. And so that's a significant difference there. But I can tell you that the addition of the second code officer has made an exponential difference in the efficiency of the office. We've gone from a position where we have seen, a number of complaints about services to 0 complaints about services. We're really, taking care of the much increased flow of work and the demand for permits. And we're also paying a very close attention to environmental issues and violations, which is really essential. It's a very important thing for a town like Raymond that is so dependent in our economy on our lakes and ponds. And so that's really been a very positive thing, the addition of the code enforcement officer, the second code enforcement officer or assistant. General assistance budget is up just slightly, but on that one, you want to keep in mind that 70% of the budget is reimbursed by the state of Maine. And, we don't know what's going to happen, but we think that a lot of what's happening with the general assistance budget is probably influenced by the pandemic. We hope and think that we'll go back to more normal levels post-pandemic, but who really knows? We have, of course, our Raymond Community Assistance Fund to help with, the needs of people who find themselves struggling in this economy, and just generally any time. So we've had great response from our citizens. We have people who put us on their, annual giving plan, and so we have funds. So if anybody's out there listening who is struggling, is having difficulty, if we can help you through general assistance, we certainly can with community assistance. So that's one change. So in the pandemic, there has been a little bit of an upward, trend on that. Raymond typically has very, very little general assistance, even very little demand for community assistance. But so we have adequate funds in both areas. Town insurance, the workers' compensation insurance is up due to the town's mod rate or modification rate increasing from 1.14% to 1.39%. And we've had a significant change in wages. We've added positions, and so that's a difference there. Under employee benefits, we have a $98,000 increase. This insurance expense this year, though, is reduced by the Maine Small Business Health Insurance Premium Relief Program. We're going to get $25,000 from that. There is a proposal in here from Sharice and me about our retirement program. Now, we are with the ICMA 457 deferred compensation plan. And so what we have is a great a plan that's based on gradients. So from 0 to 6 months, you get 0%. From 6 months, through a year, it's 1%, and then 1% a year for 5 years, up to 6%. So that's not a system that is, it was a system that was used in the past. It's been in our personnel policy. We haven't addressed it. In an effort to be more competitive, we are proposing that we take a look at that and, perhaps change it to, once you pass probation, you would go to the 6% contribution. I always encourage our younger employees to set money aside for their future. And unfortunately, some of them don't. So we're going to make a bigger push in the HR department with Rita to try to orient people about the importance of saving for retirement. And so that's a proposal we're making. It does come, of course, with a price tag. It could be up to $37,000 if everybody participated. But as I say, we get not the greatest participation rate from our younger employees. So on to, I want to also say that this budget does not include anything related to the union negotiations, which are underway right now with the fire department. So we're going to have to factor those in, and I'm not putting those in, of course, because the Board of Selectmen has not considered any changes yet. They will be doing that shortly, so we'll have to make that adjustment, if there's adjustment to be made, but that's, I guess, to be determined in the future. On the TIF budget, that end budget is increasing $126,836. The primary increase is that we're using 116,000 of these funds for technology and CIP. Now, this was Sharice's idea, and it was a great idea, and it's TIF qualified. It's something we hadn't thought of before. So $100,000 that we had planned for the fiber network infrastructure project that Kevin has had ongoing, and $16,000 for upgrades at the public safety building would be put into the TIF. We need to add a small amount of money, $2487, for the Federal Highway Administration and Federal Transit Administration. They're requiring a 20% match from all of the Greater Portland Comprehensive Transportation System communities, or PACs. Now, we have just a very small part of 302 in the PACs, district, but we're part of the program, so we would have to raise that. And I guess the theory when it comes to PACs is that there are major transportation improvements that are made in Greater Portland that benefit Raymond residents and residents of the Lake region, but we're unlikely probably to see anything directly in Raymond from that, but we do have to contribute. So revenues is another area that's I think pretty good news. We're up 165,000 in this proposed budget, or 7.58%, and that's primarily due to a substantial increase in state revenue sharing. And so we're making a conservative, and I couldn't get Kurt LaBelle to go any higher. So our conservative estimate for new value is about $10 million. And so that's very low considering the permits that we've seen. And now remember, the permits don't equal, new value, because some things don't start on time, some things aren't finished in the, in the fiscal year. And interestingly, there's a new phenomenon, and that is that sometimes people are paying more to build things like they are paying to buy things than they are actually worth. That said, the stated permits that we have right now and I'm sure Kurt would not want me to say this, but they're more like $30 million. Now, like I said, we aren't going to see $30 million, but I think we're going to see a stronger number than 10. But for the purposes of the budget, I'm telling you, we'll get 10 for certain. That's $141,000 in additional revenue that's not in the budget. We don't typically put that in, but that's, growth we'll see. Another thing is that we didn't put any money in for the library. And now the library has historically raised a significant amount of revenue. And so I think our appropriation was about 66,000 maybe. And then the library had raised another 67.8. So we need to really get a number from them. I don't have that number, but we'll need to plug that in. Perhaps when they make their presentation, we can talk with them. I didn't want to presume that they would raise all the money they did before. I didn't want to, because, we want to have a good relationship. We want to make a smooth transition, assuming that the town approves this warrant article to make the library a town department. And I'm really hopeful they will. And I'm really excited about this prospect. And this is another area where our chair, Teresa, has led the band. And so it's something that has been kind of talked about, thought about since I've been here, which is 21 years. I remember going down and making the presentation actually to the library trustees when the Board of Selectmen were interested in it. And they kind of at that time said, no, not right now. And so it's kind of been on the discussion table for 20 years. So it's a big deal. And I think it will be something that will be a good thing for the town, good thing for the library. It's going to be sustainability for the library. It's going to be the ability to broaden the programs. It's going to be the ability to have the employees there be town employees, and probably the expansion of hours and services. So a lot of good things could come out of it, but that's subject, of course, to a vote. We'll have to see how that goes. The fire department budget is up about $240,000, and that's primarily in wages. And we did put the recommendation of the fire chief that's related to the union negotiations into the budget. Of course, that is subject, as well as the benefits, to the Board of Selectmen vote. But we did put that number in that he's recommending. And so anyway, the budget also includes 2 new full-time positions. These are firefighter EMT positions. But the Public Safety Department, Kathy Goslin, I'm guessing, has led this one, as well as many other successful grant applications for the town. They put in an application for a number of positions through the federal SAFER program, which would pay the cost in full for the new positions for a 3-year period. So if we're successful, at least to the tune of 2 people and with the SAFER grant, that increase would be covered by that grant for that period of time. Now, at the end of the 3 years, you can decide whether you're going to continue or whether you're going to, not continue. You're not committed to retain people, but I'm telling you that we need the staff. We need the people in the fire department. So the likely outcome of the SAFER grant would be 3 years, federal funded, and then assumption by the town, hopefully. So on to so if the voters approve, assuming the operational cost of the library, the increase of the proposed budget there will be $135,000. Now, once again, I say that's not with any revenues. We got to talk to them about what their revenues would be. And I don't know why we've got this way, but I guess it's probably the way they fall in the book, correct, Therese? Now we're going back to debt retirement. So we have debt retirement, including the financing of a new fire apparatus, a rescue pumper for $500,000 with a term of 10 years. The new apparatus replaces a 23-year-old squad truck, and that's a 1999 Freightliner that we bought used that had come out of the South. I can't remember if it was Kentucky, but anyways, we bought it through a dealer in Connecticut, I remember. And the 20-year-old utility vehicle, 2003 Ford F-350 that I remember when that was brand new. So now that's coming up on its 20th birthday. So those 2 will go away, be replaced by this one combination truck. And then it also extends the life of our engine 1, because that won't, I guess, be put into service as often as it gets put into service today. So 2 trucks into one and preserves the life of another. The capital improvement budget increasing $35,000, equipment CIP $10,000, setting aside $100,000 for the revaluation. Municipal facilities, Nathan would like $50,000 to renovate the Public Works building on Main Street. That would be for an office space for the recreation director. And there was talk at one time, but Therese tells me this has now shifted somewhat, and we'll have to have an internal discussion about it. But there was talk about adding an administrative assistant But now it seems to be, let's share Melissa, who is already working for me, working for the assessing office. That's her primary role. And then she's, working theoretically for Nathan, although he doesn't, take as full of advantage of her as he could. And some of that is due to her location, I'm sure. But so now we have Joe, the public works director, Joe, our recreation director, the public works director, the town manager, the assessor, all with one administrative assistant. And I think what they'd like to do is build a space and have her down there, but I'm a little dubious of the sharing part. But the space, office space, right now the rec director is sharing Nathan's not very grand office that's in the back of the fire station. I don't know what it was when it was a fire department, but I remember that maybe it was just part of the room there, Dennis. I don't remember, but it's kind of been blocked off now, and Nathan has a little corner there. So they don't have great office space. So that's what that one's about. The paving CIP, Nathan wants to increase that by $100,000. Now, so probably the worst time in the year to be doing, worst time in the years to be doing paving, because of the run up in the cost of bitumen, which is related directly to the run up in cost in asphalt, fuel oil rather. And so asphalt and fuel oil directly connected. And, but what are you going to do? We want to keep on track. We want to keep our program moving forward. He has a program. And so we've made great progress. I think excellent strides in bringing the roads forward in their overall condition. And so that's what's being proposed there. The technology CIP is decreased by 90 as we're putting that into the TIF. And that's, as I said, for the fiber network infrastructure project. So there are a number of other discussion items that are not in the budget that I cut from the budget because I don't know is the things that we're going to do, but I think they're things we ought to think about and talk about. They were departmentally proposed ideas. And of course, one was coming about setting aside money for the Jordan Small renovation. Now we are going to have that school in 5 years. And so the thought was maybe we should start setting money away into a capital reserve. A countervailing view would be to say, when we get there, let's, maybe plan for what we are doing when we get closer, hire an architect, engineer, whatever we need to look at the building and decide what it would need to go into municipal use. But then at the time we actually do the work, perhaps a bond would be the way to go. That's been the way we've been doing it lately. However, the idea of a capital reserve is sort of a traditional way of doing it as well. So there was a discussion about whether we should do that. Likewise, Nathan's very interested in a public works facility at Plains Road, a consolidated public works facility. Right now he's spread over 3 facilities. And so it makes sense to have that public works facility in one location for a lot of reasons. And we have the space there. Right now we have basically an office trailer that we were able to get from BSA that came out of the Army Innovative Readiness Training Program. So that gives them a spot there to be during storms and to have a lunchroom. Then we've got the District 2 station, which has, work bays and has a parts room. And I think it may even have a little cubby of a workspace, office space. And then we come back to the fire station, the former fire station on Main Street that has become a public works building as well. So we've got public works spread all over town, and he'd like to see at some point there be a consolidated modern building. And you don't have to go too far around us to see examples of that being done. I would point to Gloucester most recently, I think. And so anyhow, that's something he'd like to see. We have the comprehensive plan update. If we can ever get anybody on the committee, Sue has advertised, and we haven't gotten much response to our advertisements. We have just a handful of people, maybe not even a handful of people who are interested. But if we do get that up and running, we're going to need some money there. And then once again, a big question is what amount of revenue from the library would we put back in the budget, so that we're going to have to decide that, I think, with them. And it's going to be a partnership, and we're going to have to decide, how this thing's all going to work and look. And so that I think we can start to do when they come and make their presentation. So anyway, the impact on the mill rate is estimated to be an increase of about 55 to 70 cents, not factoring in any use of fund balance. Factoring in the fund balance of 200 to 300,000 would you have increased the mill rate, but I think it would be decrease the mill rate to 25 to 40 cents. So that's what we're looking at, but it's all very preliminary. I think there's a lot of changes we can make in this budget, but we kind of wanted to throw it all at you. And I think Joe came in a little late, but it's not our typical budget. It's not what we want to give you. It's kind of the reality where we're at with a number of the decisions that I think have been very positive decisions that we've made. And the town is, changing, moving forward, doing some things that are beyond the basic cable services. And so I guess with that, we would like to speak with you about it department by department and answer any questions you might have about the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
Yeah.
I guess I'd like to go through each of these areas and see if the numbers prompt questions. We go to the, if you have a question, please raise your hand. You will be acknowledged and you will be able to ask the question. So first, we're going to start with administration.
Sue has some changes. I think Sue would probably love to tell you about her changes. Do you want to do that, Sue?
Oh, yes, I was sitting here with bated breath.
I didn't do it this year, right? Right.
Yes, you did good. I'm very proud.
Okay.
I have a few things in there. One is for the elections piece. For one, this is a gubernatorial year, which means a primary and a candidate election in November. Those have been trending more absentee, so the cost of absentees have gone up a bit, and postage doesn't ever drop, if anything. And if we do vote the town meeting warrant via ballot, then that costs quite a bit more to send out absentees. So I've had to increase some of the costs there, but the biggest increase in the elections budget is because of the voting booths. I'd like to replace 4 of the quad booths. When I originally bought the white ones that we have, it was from a Maine-based company who was going to be able to give us parts, maintain them, etc. The owner and founder of it developed cancer and died. So that company is gone. So that's why I'm looking at replacing them with, I have to go with a different company. So I can't just get pieces. And that's almost $4,000 I'm asking for that. Records conservation. I think a few of you have been in to see what I've been able to have done to our oldest vital books, which are death, marriage, and yes, the other thing, births, records. The oldest book, it goes back to the late 1700s. It's all old handwritten script, and it's been completely conserved. So every page is encased in Mylar and is touchable at this point because we can't hurt the parchment that it's actually, the book is made of. And it's also been scanned so I can do searches, genealogy searches on digitally instead of having to get the books out. And if anyone would like to see them, by all means come in. So I'd like to continue that process to start doing, there's one more book of births to be done, and then to start doing some of the town meeting minutes and documents that have to be, again, permanently kept, that are getting more and more fragile as we all get older. Another piece is equipment leasing. The fellow that comes out to service our photocopiers is impressed that they're still running. He had spent about 8 hours on one of them a week or so ago, and thankfully they keep on chugging, but we really do need to get those replaced, and the cost for that would be $3,400 to replace both of them with a lease to own 5-year lease. So it isn't just a single year commitment, but it also, we don't have to lay out all the money at once either. The town report, I haven't broken it out in the past separately. That's something that Sharice and I worked on, and the, sorry, my staff is leaving. That's usually does cost around $1,000 to print the town report. I don't print that many anymore. I think it's either 250 or 300 copies because most people seem to look at it online. which is a better way to look at the pictures. Some of the pictures are gorgeous and they're in color, but they're only in color online. And then last but probably not least is the tax billing. I've been requesting roughly $5,000 to do the tax bills, to send those out. We had an experiment last year where we sent out the bills ourselves. We wanted to try it because the company, we've used a couple of different companies since I've been here, but they all send our addresses through a USPS approved software to standardize them. And they run them through an NCOA process, which is National Change of Address, a NICSI process, and I won't continue. There's a lot of processes they do that are all USPS based. In the process, they do change our addresses and then mail them out, and we get a lot of undeliverables and a lot of people complaining that they don't get their tax bills. So, and on the whole, we tend to have the most recent mailing addresses. So we sent them to what we had on file without that and got fewer undeliverables, fewer complaints that people didn't get their bills. It does cost us the full first class rate to mail them out. But since we don't have to remail as many, and we didn't have the expense of having someone else stuff our envelopes and get the paper cuts from folding that we got, then it really seemed to save us money and be a lot less aggravation on the citizens as well as us. So that's why we're looking at continuing that. In the next bill, part of that is to get a folder so we can cut down on our paper cuts and make that part of the process a bit more efficient. But we're pretty good at it on the whole. So I am asking for a number of things. In total, it's not a huge capital expense, but all of this stuff adds up, I know.
Yeah. Thank you, Sue. And so another change you see here is the rescue billing. I think Sharice talked about moving things around to where they more appropriately fit. And so she's, I think, correct in saying that that's something related to the public safety department. So she's moved that from administration to public safety.
Thank you. Joe?
Thanks. One thing I noticed on your summaries for each department is there's no percentage increase or decrease being shown. So you got to kind of do the math in your head.
Actually, Joe, if I could speak to that, you have a 2-page document. It's titled Appropriation Summary.
Where do I see that?
Looks like this.
Okay.
That has your percentage and dollar amount increases.
Where is that in my booklet?
Pretty close to the beginning.
Second tab.
Second tab?
Second tab, appropriation summary.
All right.
Yeah, before you, I guess, checked in, Sharice talked about some of the changes that she made. So it is looking different. It's definitely different than what it has been. And so we apologize for that. And she also talked about if it's not something that's working for you and you think that, you know, that we ought to revert to something different, we're open and always wanting to hear feedback. So there were some changes which she went through. I don't know if you, yeah.
MMA dues?
MMA dues are in the budget, but I think at one point we talked about looking at that and deciding, you know, what sort of level of service we were getting for dues paid. So they're in the budget, but that they were put in the budget because the Board of Selectmen voted to put them in the budget.
I mean, that's a pretty substantial amount. $8,000 for a town of 4,500 people or 4,600 people. Have they gone up in their dues structure?
They did go up a number of years ago. I'm not sure if they've gone up since. And that was one of the points, along with my argument was always, along with the money, the primary thing that you get from MMA is you get the insurance programs, you know, the health insurance, the property casualty